Hi, everyone. I'm just giving us a few minutes before we start, just to help with some buffering issues. So when you first come in, I may not be talking, and that's okay. I'm trying to figure out for future stuff how to create like a parking lot. So like a waiting room. So as you join, just know that I'm just going to start our discussion around, I don't know, like 10:04-ish, just so that way we can make sure everybody's in here. One of the feedback I received was it was hard getting in, and then I'm already started, so then you miss some stuff without having to go back and rewatch it. So we'll give it a moment. So while we wait, if anybody has any questions they want to ask me off to the side to either talk about today or in future sessions, let me know, and I will write all that down. Swiper's in here with me, so you might see her go behind me or start barking. Hopefully she won't. Actually, while we do this, I'm actually going to look for a way that I can share my screen to see if once I'm in here, if I can do that. Doesn't look like it. No, it doesn't look like it. I will figure it out. The IT person in me will figure this out and make our live stream even more interesting. Good morning. Yeah, I'm glad I waited. What a minute actually does. There's quite a few people on here now, and it took a little bit to get in here. So yeah, so that's going to be my task between now and next week, is to figure out how, with the current access I have in YouTube, because they restrict a lot of things until you have a certain amount of followers, to do some stuff. So I will figure out how to create like a shared screen or something to play for you until we actually go live, giving people time to join this particular stream, since it forces you to wait until I do go live. Okay, so I'm going to start. It's 10:04, so let's get this started. So this week's topic is past lives. I get this question quite a bit about what is it, why is it important, what does it matter, how do I know what past lives are, how do I know all these things. So today's session is going to be basically the intro to past lives and everything that I know about them. And then next Saturday, I want to do a live session. So somebody who may be interested in doing it, I'd have to figure out how to do it live through here. But that'll be on my to-do list as well, is to figure that out. Otherwise, I will have somebody come here into the office with me and, practicing safe, measures using masks and stuff like that. And we'll just have to do it in session in the office if I can't figure it out. So if you're interested in having a past life regression with me, then let me know and we'll get it out there and we'll coordinate it for next Saturday for the live stream. Okay, so past lives, what are they? Obviously, the basic definition is that we've had other lives, whether it's another life or thousands upon thousands, including our souls being from other planets, other dimensions, things like that, which another whole topic of planets and dimensions. That is another conversation. But we tend to think in this life we just have this one to live. And it's truly, this is the life that we remember, not the other ones. Sometimes past lives from other lives, I'm trying to think how to word it, we do remember in this life, or we re-experience it in some fashion. And it can be re-experienced through phobias. It can be re-experienced through a heightened awareness regarding certain situations. It could be re-experienced through pain, and why, you might always have the same leg pain, even though some of it can be explained from a structural perspective, and some of it can't. Some of it could be explained from an injury, and some of it can't. And a lot of times I've found that everything is and. Spirit and spiritual stuff affects us, as well as our physical bodies and everything that's going on within our life, stress, traumas, things like that. So it's usually not just this or that, which is, why it's so important to have an understanding that not just one avenue will help us. We need multiple things. Past lives and a past life regression is absolutely something that can help people. And I'll tell you a personal story that helped me. So a past life, simple answer: we've lived another life before. We don't remember it in this physical form, except for these heightened situations, memories, dreams, things like that. One of them, one of the more common ones of awareness, is when you have the same dream over and over and over and over and over and over again. And it never changes. It's always the same details. It's always the same everything, down to every little bit of information. It's usually something traumatic, usually. Sometimes it's not, but it's usually something traumatic. Like, for example, I had somebody who said they were always going to the same beach house, and the waves were coming in and they couldn't get out, and they couldn't save their children, and they ended up feeling like they drowned in this place. And they even knew the colors of every bit of the rooms that they were in, all the objects, everything. And it was so vivid and so real for them. And yet that didn't happen in this life, so they were very confused by it as to what it is. That is an example of a past life memory that you need to deal with. And why you need to deal with it could be because maybe you have the fear of the ocean, or maybe you're afraid to have a house or be in a restaurant or a building while it's on the ocean, while it's too close. Well, not on it, but next to it. And so that fear and those phobias that we have within us, if it's past life related and we don't understand it and we don't process it, it continues in our current life. And that then creates a lot of tension, a lot of stress, and a lot of issues for us. And when those things start to happen, then it starts affecting the body. And then you add into the body already having some form of trauma or dysfunction within this life. And now you have compacted one after the other, after the other, after the other. And so when we can re-experience a past life, it lessens the way that we're responding to it in this life, either completely making it go away altogether, or it lessens it enough that you can deal with whatever that situation is. For example, I have two examples to give you from my own personal journey. I have been bound to a stake and set on fire, God knows how many times. I don't even know how many lives, but a ton of lives. In this life, I have two issues. One, if I am confined and trapped in a small area and I cannot move my arms or legs, I will freak out. It's a form of claustrophobia, but yet I can be in a space as long as I can move my arms and legs. If I can't move them, I'm not happy and I will lose my mind. The other aspect is I don't like things around my neck. I don't like tight necklaces. I don't like t-shirts that come up high. I don't like turtlenecks. I don't like things around my neck. And if I do happen to have something on, because it just works out that way, I tend to find myself clawing at my neck to, to move it, to get it off of me. Being burned at the stake, they bind you at your neck, around your arms, and around your legs. And so those lives, the fire doesn't scare me. I respect fire. I understand its power. I understand its danger, but I'm not afraid of it, except for tiki torches. And I'm sure that's something to do with the witch hunt. So, but fire doesn't cause me those issues. The binding does, the tightening around my body in that way creates these problems. So when I was able to experience a couple of those lives, it made me understand where it's coming from and why when you get trapped under a blanket and you can't get out, you start freaking out. And when those happen, I breathe, I acknowledge the situation, and I acknowledge that most of this is coming from a past life perspective. I still am not okay, but yet I'm not panicking. I'm now, okay, I can get out of this. It's okay. This is being stirred up from there. And so that stir up that we are feeling from a past life situation into this life is going to tighten your body down, and it's going to create even more dysfunction within, because if we're constantly squeezing our fists, when you finally let go, what does it feel like? And when I talk to you, why don't you do that? I want you to hold your fist tight for as long as you want to. And then when you finally let go of it, what does your hand feel like? It feels like this sense of relief as blood flow starts going through it, as energy and everything starts going through. And so if we're walking around like this from stress in our life, from dysfunction, from trauma, and then in past lives, even when we can slowly relax it, we're still walking around almost like a ticking time bomb. And it's why, a lot of people will be fine and then one day wake up with a lot of pain. It's a lot of factors built into it. And so it's important to know where things are coming from. So when it comes to past lives, I always tell somebody, if there's a phobia that you have that you cannot pinpoint it in this life, seek out a past life regressionist. It could still be from this life that you've blocked out. That's the great thing about trauma. And that's the great thing about, our defense mechanism of fight, flight, or freeze response. It allows us to leave so we can be, right? And we can get through it. But then when we try and come back into it, it's too hard. So you could have a past life issue, and I'll talk about that in a moment, that's actually within this life. It could be other things manifesting from additional stuff within your past lives. But you could have forgotten about something in this life as well, and that will affect us. So, past lives. In addition to understanding it so that way you have less stress in the system, it's still pretty cool to know. To kind of experience something that maybe we thought we never did, or, not all past lives are bad, some of them are really good. And we need to be reminded of what that feels like to have everything that we ever wanted that maybe we're not getting in this life. So when we have a past life regression experience, our spirit guides will guide you through your own safe journey to access these memories. And you won't see the spirits. You won't know that they're there unless you invite them in, families, members, or your spirits, because in the end, it's just your safe space. But it's like the big, gigantic library, and you just go to, whatever box you need to see what you need to see to work on the issue you want to work on. Because in the end, that's what a lot of it comes down. I've had a lot of people say, why do I always pick the same people over and over and over again? And then when you go into a past life, well, that's always what they've always picked. So they're not breaking the cycle. Sometimes, within the past life, you formed some form of contract or some form of curse or some form of negative energy pack that's going to travel with you throughout your lives until you deal with it. And you won't know it because when we're born into the bodies we have in this existence today, it's like forgetting everything you've ever known all over again. because when we're on the other side, we know everything, everything. And so when we're born into these bodies, we forget. And sometimes we remember, sometimes we don't. So past lives are always interesting to me. You never know what's going to come up, and you never know what you're going to need to know to get you either through some issue you're working through, or even just, for the future, something you need to be prepared for. I'm going to let go of my fist only because it's starting to feel a little tingly. So as I'm slowly releasing it, it feels as if yeah, well, obviously blood flow is going back to it because it was tingly, but it feels longer. It feels more open. And so if our body's walking around like that all day from trauma, from pain, from stress, from just, being overly concerned all the time, worried all the time, everything is shutting down, everything is stopping. So knowing your past lives is very important and can help you in some ways that you never thought possible. For example, I was allergic to cinnamon for a very long time. It started out when I was about 4 or 5 years old, but back in the 70s, they didn't test for allergies. I don't know if they had the capability or not, but that's just not what they did. So when I was 4 or 5, it would have been 1979, 1980, and they didn't do that. And the first year that I started to get sick around Thanksgiving timeframe, and it would last until well after Christmas. Well, my dad took me to the doctor. Doctor said it's just a cold. It is what it is. So when the following Thanksgiving came about and I was sick again, my dad didn't take me to the doctor. He just, okay, she's just sick. And then the following year, and so on for as long as I can remember. Didn't even pick up on the fact that every time I went to my mom's to visit her for the weekend, I'd come home sick. She used to love making us French toast that has cinnamon on it. It wasn't until I was 18 years old and started working at a bank that I got this terrible rash on my arms and my hands. And so I went to an allergist, and they told me I was allergic to printing inks. And they said that usually people that are allergic to printing inks are allergic to cinnamon. I thought it was kind of weird, but okay. And I said to him, I said, well, I don't eat cinnamon. And he's like, why not? And I was like, I don't know. I guess because after I've eaten a pie or something, I feel sick to my stomach. And he's looking at me like, and so you're allergic to cinnamon. And then they said, but what you don't realize is what cinnamon is in. And then throughout the years, I've learned cinnamon is in a lot of things. It's in ketchup. It's in Coca-Cola products. It's in a lot of alcohols. It's widely used. And throughout the years, I just wouldn't eat cinnamon, no big deal, and I tried to avoid the foods that had problems. But as the years went on, it got worse and continuously got worse to the point where it became airborne, and I could not even breathe it without going into anaphylactic shock. So during a John Barnes seminar, which John Barnes, for those that don't know, is I like to call him the godfather. I don't know if he would like me to call him that, but of myofascial release. But during a seminar, he had mentioned this particular affliction, and that people who have food allergies that continuously get worse and not better, that there was a trauma that occurred within their life where the contagion was in the air and you never dealt with the trauma. And as he was saying this, I thought of my great uncle Bud. Now, my great uncle Bud died when I was about 4 years old, almost 5. And actually, he would have been 5, but he disappeared from my life due to hospice at 4, just 2 weeks before Christmas. So cinnamon was in the air, makes sense. How do I process this? And I just acknowledged it. And I thought, well, if I get stuck around cinnamon, great. That was only one factor. That was a trauma within this life that created and amplified the issue I was having. What else? The other aspect that amplified the cinnamon allergy was a past life. And what ended up happening was I, in a past life, was murdered around cinnamon trees. And it was the last thing that I looked at as I lay dying from not only the actual death came from a stab wound to my stomach. And so I was choking on my own blood. But while that was happening and I was dying from that, the person who murdered me was cutting off my legs. So it was extremely traumatic. And cinnamon was the last thing I saw in that life. So when I got to re-experience that whole life, and when I say re-experience, I mean within details, that whole life, I can breathe cinnamon now. I haven't necessarily tried eating it, but I've spent 20 some years not doing that. I don't think I need to. If it happens, we could see. There was a couple incidents where it seemed like it may have been in something. And although I had a little bit of an issue with a tingle in my throat, or my tongue, I should say, I don't know if that was also just part of my mental status of it, because we can absolutely, make things happen because of our minds. So I wasn't sure if I was just responding it from a psychosis perspective. But I figured, you know what? If I can just breathe it and be normal, then that's all that matters. And it took experiencing that life for that to go away. That, and as well as acknowledging the hurt that I had when I lost my uncle. And the reason that he was so significant for me was because he also was somebody who could communicate with spirits. And back in the 70s, men especially did not talk about that kind of stuff. And he was showing me how to control negative energy and how to keep the bad spirits away. And I didn't recall it until later on in life when I questioned why his death was so important to me and why his life in my life was so important. So the past life regression would have brought that up as well, because again, it's not just about something that happened in a prior life. It can be this life as well. So when we talk about past lives, each person's life may have some similar stories to it and may similar existence, but in the end, it's unique to that person. And it's something that we tend to kind of dismiss very easily, our own uniqueness, because it doesn't matter if you're a twin who had the same upbringing, the same life experiences, the same everything. You're still going to process things differently, and you're still going to see things in a whole different way. And our past lives are no different. So somebody could have a past life probably once a week for years and experience something completely new. When we experience the past life, somebody who, there's two ways to do it. One, they could just ask and just say, okay, so for example, when I look at the names, I'm just going to go on the first name in the list that said good morning. So when I see Jamie's name, when I see her as a, in Western time, around 1700s, as a lonely mother on a ranch, surrounded by Native Americans who were here first. And her husband walked off to go get some food for them through hunting aspects and never came back. And she had to have a life where she was everything to her kids: the protector, the food bearer, the medicine person, because back then when you're in the middle of nowhere, that was hard to get a doctor to you too, while just really confined to her home. And as I say that, and that's just a brief, quick little thing that the spirits are telling me that she experienced. That could resonate with her, or it couldn't. Most times when the spirits are giving you a past life, it does resonate. And that's how we know it to be, true to us, because as I said in prior videos, someone had said once to me, you can tell me anything. How do I know it's true? And we just feel that it resonates. We feel that it's true, and it makes some sense because, again, our past lives affect us in this life. And it could be why she feels that, she is the sole protector of her children or her child. She has one. And that she can do it all by herself. She's done it before, even in this life. If she's done it for the most part by herself, she's done it before, so I can do it again. I'm okay. I can do this. And that strength was a great strength for her in that past life. But it also could be affecting her that of the worry of when she's in a relationship and she's married, what if he leaves and what if he doesn't come back? So it just adds. And then that doesn't take it away, those feelings, but yet at the same time, we can acknowledge them. And when we can acknowledge, it's not as burdensome. So that's one way to do a past life session. They work. They're fun. The person usually, has a lot of engaging thoughts about it and questions and things like that. But the true past life session would be one that you experience for yourself. And they call them usually past life regressions. You're not under any hypnosis. You've seen people out there who are doing hypnotherapy and these things come about. The person does not remember what they say or what they do or anything that happens within the session unless they have a recording and they can listen to it. That is one form of therapy that I personally don't like. And I know it works for some people, but I don't like it because you don't remember what's happening. And feeling is healing, even when we don't want to feel it. I don't want to feel my son's death, but I do every day. And I know it helps heal me slowly, but it chips away. So feeling is healing. And when we process it in a way that we can't understand it from a conscious perspective, I don't think it's truly healing us. It's adding to the numbness that we are already existing in life. And as we, kind of go down the same path, if we're numb to it, how can we heal from it? We can't. So I don't like hypnosis. I'm not saying it can't work. I've never tried it. I've seen people have, and they stop smoking, and that's great. Or they stop doing this, and that's great. And okay, that's what that person needs. But for me, that's just the way I kind of see it. You can feel however you want about hypnosis. So when I do past life regression, you are very aware of your surroundings and what's happening. And I am guiding you through that process. I get you to access your safe space. And then from there, we go and see what happens. We see where you want to go. What do you want to see? What do you want to work on? Which we discussed before we go into it. So if you say you want to work on why you're so judgmental, then that's what we work on. And we see what happens. We experience what lives that are causing that from past lives or current lives, or even just maybe something that was done to you in general that you've never let go, which usually is either or, because again, past life, it had to happen somewhere, including, like I was saying earlier, contracts and curses. That could be a whole other topic of conversation because that can get very in depth. But a lot of times what that is just the energy and the perception that we chose to put upon ourselves, and that we're going to hold on to it until we deal with it. And sometimes dealing with it is letting go of the past life that we did it on, or a hurt that we caused ourselves that we need to stop. So that's another reason why it can be so big. So when you go into your past life, sometimes it'll feel like you're just making stuff up because you're consciously aware of it. And when we go down that path together, I remind you that just stay with it. Just stay where we're at. Just dismiss any of those outside thoughts, current life thoughts, because our minds will want to ration out everything, and we don't want to make stuff up because we want to experience it. But the thing is, you're not making it up unless you truly are faking it, and making stuff up, which I've never had anybody do. Then yeah, you're making it up. But like I tell my students on reading cards and stuff, especially doing readings on someone, You may know some things about a person, but why would you think of that particular story or situation in that moment at that moment of time? You wouldn't have. Your spirit guides, their family members, things like that, would provide that to you. Or your own soul in a past life is talking to you about that situation or giving you what you may already know in this life that's still affecting you in other lives. So I end it by different techniques depending on what the person needs, but we get to the reason behind what we want to fix or what the person wants to stop doing. And then we put it into I put it into a way that if you ever need to come back and access this particular existence on your own, that you have the tools that you need. Sometimes the person needs to process things from this life before they can see other stuff. And that's because this life is so overwhelming. And we could do that within that space and acknowledge those things. And then I tell you what you need to do as in the world with fire ceremonies, things like that. So I never know where it's going to go. I never know what I'm going to say because it's not about scripts. It's not about knowing what to say. It's about listening to what you're describing. And then the spirits on my side giving me cues of where to go next and how to proceed. So past life regression really should be a very conscious thing with complete relaxation. It's that simple. It really is. But yet we kind of think that it's not, and we'll hold back on a lot of stuff, or you'll meet somebody who, when they're doing the past life regression, adds so much more into it. And that could be that particular therapist technique on how they do stuff, and that's fine. But when it comes to how I do past life regression, you are guiding me to find what is happening and what's affecting you. People with spiritual abilities can find it easier to navigate in the void, so to speak. People without them, you tend to struggle the most, and it's because you're not letting go and not allowing it to happen. But these past lives that we have, they're important. And so even if it's as simple as a Jamie in her own past life regression, re-experiencing that life of being on the plane in the 1700s with not knowing what happened to her husband, having 2 kids to worry about, from everything as what we would call single parent today, but now magnify that by 100 times because of not having modern conveniences, not having modern medicine, not having modern convenience of a grocery store and things like that, to truly be in the middle of nowhere with everything around you dangerous, from germs to rusty things to falling down a hill, like everything. And if she were to experience that on her own without me telling her that, it's so vivid and so strong and so much more impactful that she's now processing what happened, the strengths of what happened, the terrible weaknesses of what happened, the complete fear of what happened, as well as just the love that she may have experienced towards her husband. And I know it was love, but for some, it could be the husband was a real terrible person to them in that life. And so when they disappeared, there was a sense of relief, but then feeling guilty that happened. And so now you feel guilty. So when we can re-experience those feelings within that life and vividly see how it's working, how it's playing out, then we can take from it a whole new meaning and a whole new perspective than just me telling you or somebody telling you what past life you had. So re-experiencing.
I didn't get that.
Sorry, Siri decided she wanted to talk because I raised my arm. So experiencing the past life heals us in so many ways and so many levels that it's just one of those things. Sometimes it seems too good to be true, but once you experience it, it's quite amazing. It really is. So if you haven't tried one, do it, especially if you have phobias in this life that you can't necessarily pinpoint where it's from existence of the current world, as well as airborne allergies. Any allergies, it's worth a try. Physical pain that no matter every avenue you tried, including myofascial release, it's not taking you as far as you wanted to. Because even if you did myofascial release and mental health services and yoga and Reiki and this and that and everything helps to a certain degree, but then doesn't take it all away, it could be that that's the level where you're going to get, and your day-to-day life is putting you constantly into that pattern. But it could also be something a little bit further on a past life issue that you haven't addressed or resolved yet. I'm just kind of tracking, make sure I said most of what I wanted to say. So let me check for questions real quick while I continue to regain my thoughts. Okay, so Rose just mentioned that when she had her session, it was very profound and provided clarity in her life today, which again just solidifies what we've been talking about. She said, I discovered things about my connection to the universe. The medieval town I was not really a part of, the river I was fighting to walk in, leading me to the sun. Very cool. So she's just recapping a life that she experienced and some guidance that she needed, which may or may not make sense to you in this like quick little blurb, but to her, it made all the sense in the world, and that's what's important. So Alice asks, do I do past life regression on kids? We absolutely can. Children will probably get into it a little bit easier, probably quicker, because they won't be thinking about making things up or that, how long has it been? How much more time do I have? After this, I need to go to the grocery store. After this, I need to do this. Oh, I forgot about this. I forgot about that. Kids don't tend to think that way. So they're in here and now. So they typically get through a past life regression really quickly and may not have to do all the steps that I do for adults. It could just be a matter of a breathing technique and then going from there. And then within 15 minutes, they would experience something. What you could do, depending on the age of the child, and the child's going through a lot of stuff and they're too young to maybe consciously process, my guidance or speak at all, you can do a past life regression in a similar fashion for that child. So, and the way that works is the way that anybody with abilities is, it's not that we know everything. We connect to the universe, to everything, and spirit guides, family, strangers, whomever, the energy on the other side that is just flowing. So kind of think of it like a river. It's just flowing, except for a river goes one direction, but the energy flow on the other side is everywhere. It's like pulling, something out of the air. And so that energy of that information is then processed through us, whether it's consciously processed through us or subconsciously, and they're just using your mouth to communicate, which is usually what happens for me, which is why I never remember what I tell people, because I'm not in a conscious state. They're just channeling through me. So what you could do if the child is even has disabilities where maybe speech is not really there, I can telepathically talk with them. That's just a label to use because, again, it's just accessing that energy and us communicating through the energy void. But people would look at it as telepathic abilities. Or if you wanted to experience what they're going through, we make that connection to them. And it's a little more challenging, I will say, for you than me to bridge and make that connection unless your abilities are turned on. But it can be done. And you can then experience some lives that your children have gone through that is and is affecting them in this life as well, or a contract they might have made or something like that. All right, so Vignetta says, do you think this pandemic might have brought up past life fears in us? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Not only does that affect us from a past life perspective, but just our day-to-day stuff, like what, for those that, need the pandemic to end because of financial means, okay, that's a normal everyday fear, concern, because we all have bills. And even if the companies, whether it's an apartment place, a mortgage company, utilities, whatever, are trying to work with us, we still have that in our mindset of like, I need to pay my bill. And the longer that it goes on, the less money I'm going to have. And then how am I going to catch up? Right. So we have that day to day from just this life of expectations about the value of money and how much it's going to affect us. But for those that are still making some income in some way, and for some making more on unemployment than they would if they worked, but yet that need to get out there, there's a few things, and it's going to probably be both. But past life definitely contributes to it, but then also like, what are you valuing in this life, which could be from things that happen in this life, as well as most likely both that also happened in a past life, that you're valuing, the need to go get your hair cut, like the need to get it dyed, that it's not, doesn't necessarily because you're envious and that, you need to look a certain way, even though for some it is, but for some, it's how they present themselves to the world, the face mask that they're putting on. And if that changes and they don't look the same, then how are people going to perceive them? And that could be also our upbringing in this life, things of how we were raised and, our caregivers that we went through and how we process things, but then absolutely in past life. The biggest thing with the pandemic, which I'll just add in here, spiritually, I knew something massive was going to happen and affecting us. I didn't know what it was because I didn't really pay attention to it. I'm so used to being bombarded by spirits that I ignore them most of the time unless they really cause me a problem. And even when they do, it's kind of like I only half listen at that point, just so that way they stop affecting me the way that they are. But when it comes to this pandemic, the biggest thing out of it is it gets us to allow us to reassess and restructure things in our life as to what's important and what isn't important, what is working for us and what is not working for us, what have we been wanting to do that we haven't been doing, whether we haven't been doing it because we haven't had the time, whether we haven't had the money, whether there's something holding us back, whether it's this life or past life, on the reason that we're not making the changes that we have to make. So this pandemic, I'm going to wear a new dog, probably bark. This pandemic, the best thing we can take out of it is where we can go now and in the future to help us grow and be the person we want to be. Because I know everybody has some aspect that they want to change in their life and they're not doing it. And so for me, with the pandemic, it's forced me to do the virtual stuff, which I had been talking about for years and never did it. I have the time, I just didn't do it. And I don't know why. I still have some hesitation in doing some of the virtual stuff as if it's some form of burden, but it's not. It's actually a lot of fun. So there's something in a past life that is affecting me on my level of, somebody's outside, on my level of understanding. So, and why that doing this virtually is holding me back. I'm going to pause a second. Thank you, Rose. I see you said I love to see your face. Swiper. Sorry. I'm going to get Swiper. Swipe. Come in here. Come up here and say hi. Come on. Let me show you this big, loud, noisy thing. Come here, Swipes. Come here. Come here. Up. Up, up. Come here. Up. Get up here. All right. Say hi, Miss Swiper. This was the noisemaker. What she does. She thinks she defends me for every reason and everything. So sorry about all that barking. Next time she won't be over here. If she's going to do that. Anyway, so what time is it? Yeah. So that's pretty much it. So next week, let's talk about that. So next Saturday, I want to do a live one to kind of really show you how it goes. If I can find a way to do like a split screen and get somebody else in the live with me, and I'm not sure if it's available to my current level of YouTube based on the followers. But if not, then whoever it is, as long as you're somewhat local or don't mind driving here, we can do some practice safe distancing and we can do it face to face. You don't have to be on the screen if you don't want to be. Just need your voice at most. That would be your choice. So if you're interested in doing a past life with me next week on the live stream, then that's what we'll do. The first few minutes will just be kind of me talking, just reminding everybody the process and how it works, because that's what I would do with the person in front of me, and kind of go from there and see what comes up. And then you'll get to experience that if you want to. So my niece is on here. So she said, Swipey, I miss you both. I miss you too. I miss the kiddos. Give them a hug for me. Vignetta said, would I do Zoom? I would do Zoom, but the thing is I need to somehow incorporate it as part of the YouTube things, and this is where people know to go, and I don't want to just be like, oh, well, this week go to Zoom, because then it just adds some confusion and things like that. So, and then, of course, you know, with Zoom, you can't really watch it later on. So as long as I can find a way to incorporate the Zoom within the YouTube streaming, then I will. I was looking at that this morning and I was having some problems. So I will figure it out. Like I said, I will make it work. Even if you're not on the screen, but you're on my phone and they hear your voice through my phone onto the computer, then that's what I would do. So any volunteers, let me know, and then we'll talk about the details of it. If I don't get a volunteer, oh, I can record it and upload it. Okay, that's a good idea too. Thank you, Vinetta. If I don't get any volunteers, that's fine. And we will talk about something else. I'm not sure which, but I'll think of something between now and then. I do have a list of things that I know I want to talk to. There's also going to be a future one where it's kid-friendly. YouTube has this thing where unless the video is specifically for children, anybody under 18, I have to turn off that somebody under 18 cannot see the video. And since it's not specifically geared towards children, that's currently off. So one of these days I will be doing one specifically towards kids, probably talk more about night terrors and things like that. So that way the kids can talk about it, and they can see it and then tell their parents, you know, what's happening. So that will definitely be something in the future as well, is making things for kids. Especially since Allie asked about kids. So I wanted to make sure I point that out. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to end a little bit early. Thanks for joining me, and I will be on next week if I don't see some of your faces sooner. Have a good one.